Of course, there are more developments about the Phala Phala saga. They've emerged following the leaked letter that was sent by former State Security Agency Director General Arthur Fraser to the police in June. Now, in the letter, Fraser lists names of those he alleges were involved in the investigations of the theft that took place in President Cyril Ramaphosa's Phala Phala farm in February 2020. The presidential spokesperson, Vincent Magwenya, said the presidency is aware of the letter but will not comment on it as it forms part of the Hawks investigation.
Now, Parliament has set up a panel to look into allegations made against Ramaphosa, and the President is given until Thursday this week to respond. Now, Paul O'Sullivan, a forensics consultant and the founder of Forensic for Justice, joins us on the line now. Mr. O'Sullivan, thanks for your time. Welcome to Morning Live.
Good morning to you.
So this story has obviously become center stage in the latest round in the Phala Phala saga. So what is your reaction, first and foremost, to what has been reported with Arthur Fraser coming out about this Phala Phala saga? Let's start there. When it first came to light, were you aware of it?
No idea whatsoever. The first I knew about it was the same as when all other South Africans knew about it. It came up in the media, I think it was in June this year, and that's the first I knew of it.
So these allegations now, and there have been a lot of allegations leading up to this point when your name has now become entangled in it. And it's now alleged that you actually helped to trace the suspects that burgled President Ramaphosa's Phala Phala farm. Were you part of that investigation in any way, shape or form?
No, as I said, I had no knowledge whatsoever. I didn't even know Phala Phala existed. That's how closely involved I was. I never knew that the president had a game. Well, I knew he had a game farm, but I didn't know where it was. I didn't know the name of it. I had no knowledge whatsoever. And here we have a situation where the media take all this and glibly report on it as if it's fact, and it's nothing of the kind. It's complete fiction. And it's fiction of a man who's stolen probably hundreds of millions of rand of taxpayer money and should be in prison.
So why do you then think you've been implicated in this particular saga?
Well, I mean, if you look at how he's implicated me, he said the following. Mr. O'Sullivan, who is a close associate of both the President and Mr. Chowki, is said to have used his private investigation company to assist in the tracing of the persons alleged to have broken into the president's residence. Now, he doesn't even put that under oath. He puts it in a letter. You don't investigate allegations in a letter. He doesn't even say who said it. He just says it's said to have used. He doesn't say who it was said it. He doesn't say why they said it and where they were when they said it. He gives absolutely no information at all. And that's exactly what is contained within the rest of the information that he's allegedly supplied to the Hawks and simultaneously to his chosen friends in the media. He doesn't give it to the whole media. He gives it only to those that he knows will make some mileage out of it. I call them checkbook journalists. And then you end up with a situation where this thing gets blown out of proportion. I don't know what took place there. I don't know whether there were any funds stuffed into a couch as alleged by him. But if it's like everything else he alleges, it's probably false. I'll give you an example. In this original affidavit, which I did look at and I did carry out a preliminary investigation on, he showed some photographs of one of the so-called suspects standing next to a motor vehicle that he purchased with the proceeds of an alleged crime at Phala Phala. We were able to show that those photographs were dated a year earlier than the alleged incident took place at Phala Phala, and therefore it was impossible unless the guy had a time machine to go back in time and buy cars with the proceeds of crime from a crime that allegedly took place in February 2020. So that makes the whole thing a joke, and how the media have blown it out of proportion, and how we get a situation where Parliament wants to investigate the lies of this scallywag It's just beyond me. I mean, the man is fit for nothing other than prison. He needs to pay back all the money he's stolen.
So, and that, of course, is something that needs to be looked at, should have been looked at by now, given that it's also been out in the public domain for quite some time. But just getting back to the matter at hand. Now, Fraser's letter sends pointers to the police elite unit, the Hawks, where to look for answers in their investigation in this whole Phala Phala saga against President Ramaphosa, against the Presidential Protection Unit head, Major General Wally Rhoode, and also members of crime intelligence. So have you known, or is this once again a situation where you've only just come to know that you are one of the people listed there?
Well, he's only put my name down in a hearsay fashion. He doesn't say who says it, and he puts it in a letter. He needs to put it under oath. He needs to state under oath. And then I can nail him for perjury, because at the moment he just sticks it in a letter. Well, that in itself is an offence. It's called defeating the ends of justice. And when I get back to South Africa, so I'm currently on vacation, I'm going after him for that. And if he thinks he can get away with defaming me and bad-mouthing me, he's got another thing coming. And that will probably be his downfall, because I've now made it clear to him. I sent him a message on his phone and I told him, listen, you've now picked a fight with the wrong person. I'm coming after you, and I will. I will not rest until he goes to prison. One has to look at some of the other things that haven't been answered yet. How many other sleepers? I'm saying Walter Rhoode needs to answer questions as well. How come he was arrested and charged with corruption some years ago, and yet those cases were mysteriously dropped? Those cases need to come back into the open. I'd also like to know where he got the cash from to pay off all the debts he was in 2 years ago. And suddenly, miraculously, all of his debts have been paid off. He needs to explain that to the public. He needs to explain why he gave the video of the break-in that took place at Phala Phala to Arthur Fraser. What's it got to do with Arthur Fraser, who at the time, I guess, was in charge of the prisons, or pretending to be in charge of the prison, so he could get Zuma out of jail on a double quick motion. At the end of the day, there's far too many questions, and the sooner these people get rolled into jail where they belong, the better.
So, Major General Wally Rhoode, you say he is the one who is responsible for leaking this information to Arthur Fraser. Are you 100% certain of that?
I'm not saying he leaked it to him. I'm saying he gave it to him. Leaking is what you do to the media. You give it to somebody in the media and say, here, don't publish that and don't tell them you got it from me. Rhoode was the one that had the video. And it's ironic that at the time when he's able to pay off all of his debts, the video now is in the hands of Arthur Fraser. And Arthur Fraser, apart from giving it to DPCI with a whole lot of waffle about things that allegedly happened, also supplies it to his chosen journalists. They've got the video. They have it. And how come, they got it? They got it because they got it from Arthur Fraser. Arthur Fraser could not have got it from anyone other than Wally Rhoode.
Why do you say that? Is Rhoode the only one who would have had access to that information, to that footage? And are you 100% sure of that?
I'm not 100% sure, but you don't have to be a genius to work out the flow of events. What I'd like to see is Walter Rhoode explaining how he paid off all of his debts in 2020.
So tell us about his debt and how you came to know about that. When did you start investigating that and came to the conclusion that he was paid a large amount of money to pay off his debt? And how much are we talking about, by the way?
Well, I'm not discussing the amounts because I don't think it's appropriate to do that. But he was in debt. He was heavily indebted with a number of entities, including SARS. And now suddenly he doesn't owe anybody any money. And that needs to be investigated, because if a person has cash, they need to explain where it came from. And at the end of the day, he needs to explain his involvement when he was working at the NPA in a so-called coloured grouping of individuals that all are arrested and charged with corruption, and how that case miraculously got removed from the role and nobody got prosecuted. It was a prosecutable case. If it wasn't for the interference of Zuma and Nomgcobo Jiba and Lawrence Mwebi, those people would have gone to prison. He needs to also explain how it was that he got fired from the NPA for dishonesty and corruption and suddenly resurfaces as a major general in the police. It means somebody arranged for him to get that appointment, and we need to know who.
So when did you become aware of this, Mr. O'Sullivan?
In June this year.
So before that point, you were not aware of this? You didn't know about Major General Wally Rhoode, the fact that he was then very closely working with the president in his capacity as the head of the president's security detail there. You didn't know that?
I had no idea. It wasn't my business, and I hadn't bothered looking at it.
So it became your business when he implicated you?
Excuse me?
When did it become your business?
Who do you think you're talking to?
Well, I'm asking a question. We're having a conversation.
No, you're not asking a question. You're trying to implicate me. And if that's the way you're going to carry on, we shouldn't continue this discussion. Let me make one thing clear to you. I have no interest whatsoever in Phala Phala or what goes on there. But when I see Arthur Fraser, who stole hundreds of millions of rand from this country, trying to avoid jail by dreaming up stories and putting them into the media, I then start looking at all the people involved in that. I run a charity called Forensics for Justice, and we take it upon ourselves to investigate people like Arthur Fraser. And he put himself firmly onto my radar screen. And it's no coincidence that back in 2012, when Rhoode was involved in hanky-panky with other people in the NPA, it's no coincidence that I then discover he got off the hook then as well.
Mm-hmm. And as I said,
I'm not going to have people, whether they're criminals or journalists, trying to implicate me. So if you come with any more dodgy questions, I'm closing this call.
But what's a dodgy question, Mr. O'Sullivan? You said he was not my business up until that point. So I asked a follow-up question asking, when did he become your business? Wow, that's Mr. Paul O'Sullivan there. And as I said, Mr. O'Sullivan says that I asked him, when did he become interested in investigating Major General Wally Rhoode? And he explains that and says, well, he was not my business up until that point when he implicated me. And I asked, so, basically, he was not my business. So I asked, when did he become your business? And I don't know what's wrong with that. But that's what Mr. O'Sullivan has to say. He says he's not going to answer a dodgy question. I don't know what a dodgy question is. We don't know what's going on here for the most part. There's people being implicated. There's allegations. There's counter-allegations. There was talk, Mr. O'Sullivan also is on record as saying that 95% of what Fraser says is hearsay. And, looking at that, so I was hoping to ask him about that. If 95% of it is hearsay of what Arthur Fraser is saying, how did he arrive at that conclusion? And also, what is the truth then? What is the 5% that is true? And what is the 95% of that story that is not true? But unfortunately, as you heard there, Mr. O'Sullivan not interested in answering any further questions. Forensics consultant Paul O'Sullivan was discussing allegations that reference his involvement in the Phala Phala controversy. So that's where we have to leave it. Quick break here on Morning Live.